And we'll start with the Serenity Prayer. God,
grant us serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Next up, we have Tim M.
Yay!
Woo! Who will speak?
Rock on!
He's bringing us the subject of steps 10 and 11. There will be an Ask It basket during Tim's sessions. Please post questions and we will filter them up to the top table. Everyone, please help me welcome Tim M.
Good afternoon, my name's Tim, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Tim.
The reality has outpaced the script, so it's not going to be on 10:11. I might get on to 10:11. Now, some of you heard me yesterday or earlier today. If you didn't, I'm an alcoholic. My date of sobriety is 24th of July 1993. I'm from a little east of here. And by that I don't mean Arkansas or even Atlanta, like even more exotic than Atlanta. I'm an alcoholic, I'm a member of Al-Anon, and I've done a whole load of other stuff which I no longer do. Even though some of those things are accepted by society, they're not accepted by my higher power. The men will know what I'm talking about. Some of the questions, we've got some great questions from the basket. Some of those I think are so great and so broad, we can put them to like everyone tomorrow. There's a big question and answer session. Some of them are specific to my talk, so I'll look at some of those. Where did the word tookin originate? So there's the slogan, keep on trucking. Here are the steps we took, keep on tookin. Now, many years ago, I was talking to a friend of mine in AA who said, well, I've finished the steps with my sponsor. And they had a little ceremony with a candle and a cake, and I was troubled by it. I was just, finish the steps. You finished steps 10, 11 and 12, have you? Or done? That's it now. What do you do now? The steps are not an academic exercise I do on the side. They're a method I learn by which I live life. The answer to alcoholism is not to treat AA as a tool that I use in my life, but to give myself to it as a method of living. With that understanding, the steps, the program cannot be completed. You wake up every morning and the bed has been slept in and needs to be remade. Every day I wake up, my life needs to be remade. The day that is ahead of me is empty and I need to do something with it. The person in question a couple of years later left AA. Don't know what's happened, they've left AA. I don't know if there's a connection between the philosophy of completing the steps and the leaving of AA, but there we have it. The first 9 steps can be completed. A lot of things that I've heard in AA over the years, which I fell foul of myself, were excuses for delay. And one of the great ones, it's progress, not perfection. I'm sure you've heard in meetings, I haven't been calling my sponsor and I've been stalled on my step 4, but hey, it's progress, not perfection. You have to be doing something to be making progress. If you're doing nothing, that's not progress, that's something else. And there are a couple of lines here which seem to be contradictory. So, with all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. We beg of you. So much for suggestions, we beg of you. But then a couple of pages later, no one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We're not saints. The point is we're willing to grow along spiritual lines. And I think the way to square the circle there is it looks like a contradiction. It looks like saying, go at it, and then, oh, don't worry too much. Well, which is it? Do I have to pick one? If we all sat Joe, or indeed any of us, up at the front and said, do your absolute best to draw a portrait of Joe with a ballpoint pen and a sheet of paper, the results that we would all come up with would be extremely different. Some people it would look like, if it was me, it would look like a child's drawing. Some people might end up drawing a tree because they got distracted. Other people, it will be a startling, creative portrait of Joe. But everyone would have made the same effort for an hour. What the program asks me to do is put the effort in, and it's saying don't expect too much in terms of results. A friend of mine who's sober a very long time says don't expect much to change very quickly. Now, some things do change very quickly, but other things take a long time. It was a long time in AA before I dealt with my food stuff, for example. Some things just took me a while to get to. So what does this mean, that this being willing to go to any lengths? And this ties in with one of the other questions. The Keep On Tookin means first 9 steps, you can complete them. Either I've told all of the secrets or I haven't. Either I have a secret or I don't. Either I have done my utmost to track down everyone I owe amends to because I treated them badly, or there are actions I could take I haven't taken. Now, some things in amends have a tail. So let's say the amend is to go and visit your mother every week until the poor old soul passes on. Of course, that can't be completed until the person has passed on, but you can be up to date. If you're paying back £1 billion, $1 billion, it's going to take a while to get through that. You haven't completed the payback process, but you can be up to date. So you can complete the first 9 steps. But the last 3 are the daily way of life. And I've heard people say really remarkably, step 10, 11 and 12, I haven't done my step 9 amends yet, so I'm not going to start on 10, 11 and 12. My sponsor hasn't got me going on there. And notice what people say. It's progress, not perfection, therefore I don't have to do anything. It's in God's time, therefore I don't have to do anything. Perfectionism is one of my character defects, so I'm not going to put my back into it because I'd just be acting out my perfectionism there. Beware, I've had to beware all of the excuses which sound really spiritual, but license me doing little or nothing. The ego is very, very clever. And so I got on to 10, 11 and 12 from day one. So as soon as I was starting to put together some physical sobriety, 2 days, 5 days, 7 days, I was told to make myself useful to the people coming in through the door, to put my hand up to share what actions are you taking, what results are you getting. So I don't have to share wisdom, I have to share experience, and there's a big difference between the two. And as soon as I started doing that, I started to realize my life had a purpose. And I thought I was trained to think that the purpose of my life was fulfilling my potential as a human being and career and making something of myself in the world and developing skills and what a rat race. The potential, the human potential AA has given me is the potential to be significant in someone else's spiritual growth, in the same way that other people have been significant in mine. Everything else is candy. Everything else is the container which holds that. And I was given a greater purpose at 7 days sober, 10 days sober, 2 weeks sober, than years of getting qualifications or years of progressing in jobs or careers have ever done. Keep on Tookin. What was the question? Oh, that was the question. I mentioned yesterday, what did you do differently after your slip, someone asks. I may have mentioned this, but did I say anything about relapse, Joe? I think yesterday I said that to relapse you've got to recover. You've got to have recovered first. If you haven't recovered, if you haven't completed the first 9 steps, I was told, you're not relapsing, you're continuing to drink because your alcoholism hasn't been treated. So someone's saying, I'm 2 days back from a relapse, I'm 4 days back from it. You're 4 days back from your continuing alcoholism. I use little periods of sobriety to salve my conscience that, hey, look everyone, I'm trying really hard. But what I was actually doing is building up coupons to spend on my next slip. The well-known stages of the spree include the little bouts of sobriety where I go and just mend enough to keep the show on the road, to allay my own guilt. Once I've done enough to allay my own guilt, I can go and drink again. That was the little cycle. Went round and round and round and round and round. I didn't stop the cycle. Divine intervention stopped the cycle. Bill said, I was separated from alcohol, not I separated myself from alcohol. Once you're in that cycle, you just have to wait for the click and then you're out. But you have to wait for the click. I couldn't get myself out and no one else could get me out. What did you do differently after the, well, let's call it the last drink? My day, from the moment my great red eyes cracked open in the morning until I went to sleep at night, was designed by AA members. So I was told to pray in the morning, to read spiritual literature, to read the big book on the train to work, to do my best at work. I buttered sandwiches, I buttered bread for sandwiches. That was my first job. I wasn't qualified enough to do silver service, so they got me buttering bread. I was told to butter the bread well. And here's the funny thing. The focus of my family was largely on achievement. When my brother committed suicide, a relative said, if you do well at school, it will take your mother's pain away. Now, this was not a subliminal message, those were the literal words. I didn't sort of pick that up. That was literally the family message. Achievement is doing stuff which looks good to other people. And one of the other interesting questions that people talk about in AA a lot is, well, how do you know what's God's will? And there's this, we're going to be controversial. I don't know if it's hit Tulsa yet, but in London there was a big phase of something called two-way prayer, with this very elaborate system of praying and hearing messages, secret special messages back from God, where, you know, when you go like click your fingers, God's going to come sit next to you and tell you all the things you need to know. I'm being a little bit facetious, but you get the idea. Two-way prayer, like it's a symmetrical relationship, like you and the creator of the universe are somehow in a little one-to-one meeting, like with your line manager. What is God's will? It's a legitimate question. And the message that was given to me when I was new was almost everything which is God's will, you already know. Don't cheat, don't steal, turn up when you said you were going to turn up, do the thing you said you were going to do, fulfill the obligations in your life, fulfill them as soon as practically possible, not at the last minute. Do your absolute utmost to do each thing perfectly, even if no one is watching, even if it appears as if it doesn't matter. Imagine how would someone who simply wants to be maximally diligent do this job. And if you ever run out of obligations to fulfill, then by all means go to God and say, do you have any more? And here's the funny thing. If one fulfills one's obligations, this is my experience over many years, when I fulfill my obligations, I do so promptly and I do so with maximum diligence, more are coming. the obligations just pile up in my life. I never run out of things to do. And I never run out of people in my life. I'm not much of a people person. I can deal with people, but in small quantities. I'm not much of a people person, and I have 2,500 contacts in my phone, not because I run around getting numbers of people. This has just happened. This is the solution to that terrible separation. I thought that, you see, the solution is not symmetrical to the problem. I'm lonely, I feel disconnected, I don't know how to form bonds with people. Butter the bread. Butter the bread really, really well. Become the best bread butterer. Your life will fill with obligations, and at the other end of each obligation is a human being you're fulfilling the obligation for. And whenever I'm fulfilling an obligation well for another person, I'm telling them, you matter to me. Even if I don't know that's what I'm doing. And then the relationships form themselves. Sometimes people talk about working on relationships. I've never worked on a relationship in my life. My friend Edwina said, as soon as you're talking about the relationship to the person you're having the relationship with, the relationship is over. You've killed it. The magic's gone. Deal with your own stuff, with your own people. Best foot forward. The real thing in the relationship is not the secret darkness and all the insecurities. It's the joy of simply being together and enjoying stuff together. Someone sent me an anniversary card of a rowing boat or similar, just floating down a river with two Labradors sitting in the prow of the boat, just looking out, just happily, looking ahead, looking happily next to each other. Not discussing little secret things, but just being happy, being together. That's the real thing. It's not all the secret darkness. The secret darkness is my little private cloud of BS that I think has got to do with someone else, but is really to do with stuff from 40 years ago. I do not have the right to bring that into someone else's life. Anyway, back to the question. What did I do differently after the slip? I fulfilled my obligations during the day. I went to meetings, I talked to people, I worked the steps. In other words, I did basic entry-level AA. And I'm 31 years sober. How do I live? I do basic entry-level AA. There is no advanced AA. You get better at it because you've been doing it for longer. But there is no secret room where the secret esoteric messages are being revealed. Doesn't exist. For a while, there are little catchphrases that go around AA that you hear, and then they're the buzzwords for a while, and then they disappear again. One of them, people when looking for a new sponsor would go around saying, I really need a new experience with the steps. Like, as if something has been withheld from you in the past. As though the book is the Da Vinci Code. If you put together two separate items, you'll unlock the secret magic compartment. Like in AA, there's as though there's in Hogwarts, in Harry Potter, there's the restricted section of the Hogwarts library, where all the secret special stuff in. Doesn't exist. Easier, softer way. So the answer, what did I do differently after your slip? I did as I was told, and I did what it said in AA. That's it. All you have to do is do what you're told, not get clever. Some of these we balked. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. Now, the way that's heard, the way I heard it was, oh my God, the program must be really hard. It must be really harsh. We just have to put up with how hard and harsh it is. I kind of AA sigh. Now, this is the point I suggest today. You think you're reading the book, you're not, you're projecting something onto it. Let's see what it really says. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. Now, if you're going round to different grocery stores and you're looking for porridge oats, and you go to different places, and you finally find 32 ounces of oats for a couple of dollars. I thought I could find cheaper oats, but I couldn't. That means the oats you have found are the cheapest oats. This is just straightforward English grammar, which I teach for a living. We thought we could find an easier, softer way. That means the AA program is the easiest, softest thing you can imagine. And it's so common, I hear it the whole time. Life's not a bed of roses. You know, life doesn't stop happening just because you get sober. Life, you know, this week, life has been lifey. Life has fired at you at point blank range. Life is not a weapon, it's a gift.
Yeah.
Life is hard. Compared to what? What is the point of comparison here? Life is not the problem. The problem is how I've been living it. What that line tells me, do you want an easy life? Do you want a soft life? I'll tell you how. Do what's in here. Then you'll have an easy, soft life. If we sold it that way, I think a lot more people would buy around, oh, it's really hard. You're step 4. You're doing step 4. Are you suicidal yet? There's the short way round and there's the long way round. And I'm going to say it in lots of different contexts. The solution is not symmetrical to the problem. So you think you've got some really complex problem in some area, and it's usually work on money on one hand or relationships on the other. And this is what I was going to say about I've never tried to work on a relationship. Let's say in a relationship, I had some bumpy periods with my other half. We've been together 21 years. We're very happy. We've never had an argument. And just one little thing on that. We know lots of people who argue in relationships. And I was saying to my other half, why is it that we don't argue? Other people argue. It's not that we don't have things to work through, but we don't argue. And we don't abuse each other. I said, why don't we argue? He said, because we don't like it. We don't want to, so we don't. Now, the flip side of that, if it's happening, it's because it's being sought out. I've had other situations where I've had conflict, and what I eventually learned when I was honest with myself, the conflict was not the problem, the conflict was my purpose. Because when I'm in conflict, I'm not responsible, you're responsible. Delicious. Now, how about this? Imagine you've got a complex situation domestically or a complex situation at work. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful. Now, those are two pretty specific adjectives. Agitated or doubtful. But agitated, I can take that legitimately to really mean anything but peace. Even the slightest lack of peace means you don't have peace. Agitated, any emotional disturbance, or doubtful, don't know what to do. I've literally never had a problem where it doesn't fall into one of those. So when sponsees call with a very complicated situation and you feel tempted to get out a block of paper and a pen to start drawing out the kind of tree diagram or the flow chart of what happened or how everyone is related to everyone else, and 1 minute in you're completely confused because she has been used 8 times and yet there are 5 women involved and you don't know which the she refers to. You need to simplify with the sponsee and say, right, are you A, upset and don't know how to be upset, or B, are you uncertain what to do? And it's either A or B or both. And it's got an answer here. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. How many of each? One. One thought, one action. In other words, what's next? And it's going to say on page 59, may you find him, God, may you find him now. Not yesterday, not tomorrow. Give us this day our daily bread, not a contract for bread for the rest of our lives. Earlier on the same page, it says we usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. Singular, next step. One, just one. That we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. What is the problem? What is the next step? That's it. Ask for the right thought or action, just one. And then some things to tell oneself. We constantly remind ourselves we're no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. This is all page 87, 88 and step 11. So, how do I solve a complex work situation? How do I solve a complex relationship situation? The answer is, I don't. I only need to do the next action. All the blah 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 blah, all of that irrelevant. God doesn't care. Whenever I'm talking about someone else, whenever I'm talking about something out there, have you noticed when you're talking about someone else or something out there, it's almost always something wrong? It's very rarely gratitude. This amazing thing is happening. You ask people how they are, they tell you their biggest problem of the week. They don't tell you all the things, you know, the air conditioning at home is just working so well. It keeps my house at just the right temperature, and all of the channels on my cable are working perfectly well. Nothing is playing up. You know, the dog is obedient, and no, they'll tell you about problems because they think that their problems are going to be interesting to you. Now, if you're an untreated Al-Anon, they will be, because they're a distraction from your own stuff, and they're also an opportunity. As an Al-Anon, I want to fix you, and if I can't fix you, I want to hurt you. To punish you for not being fixable by me. Did that get through? Oh, good. Are you in a helping profession? Yes, you are, aren't you? Yes. And so I had what we might call a situation. Let's call it a blessing. I had a blessing situation earlier this year with work, which I mentioned a little bit about yesterday. I wouldn't say it's a problem, it was a problem. It was a situation in which there were blessings because there was room for growth, and I had to grow through a number of resistances. There were truths which I hadn't wanted to face, which I'd been dancing around, but eventually caught up with me. And I had to make some practical changes in how I do my job and how I interact with clients. I needed to stop being so much of a jerk and a prima donna and just get with the program and deal with the world as it currently is, rather than trying to separate myself, hoping that the world would catch up with my plan. That's the basic inventory there. How did I get through it? Not by figuring everything out, not that I didn't try, not that I didn't bore people stupid talking about it, but the way out is to shut the F up and ask God for the next right action and let the thing sort itself out. This is why I don't need to work on relationships. This is why I don't need to work on situations. I've got a channel to the creator of the universe. And the creator of the universe can see round corners, which is a great superpower, one that I don't have. It mentions here meditation. And I really hope I'm not going to offend anyone. I've got to be a bit careful because I'm not leaving Tulsa till Wednesday, so there's time to get me if I say something which is really offensive. I was at a service meeting. I was chairing a group conscience of the continental Europe region of AA a couple of years ago, and I was coming in as an outsider to chair the group conscience so that I'd be a neutral person. And so I chaired it, and there were people from 30 different countries, and it was a little bit heated, and it was their sort of annual inventory or something. And I produced for the Sunday morning a PowerPoint presentation of my own observations of things I could see that were happening, just in case the feedback was useful. It was part of what I was there to do. And I had a car waiting outside with the engine running. So that after I delivered this feedback, I was just straight off to the airport, and that was on that occasion, that was probably a good idea. But meditation. One of the problems with the Big Book, and I alluded to this yesterday, is a lot of the words don't mean today what they meant in 1939 when the book was written. And unfortunately, lots of the words which mean something different are absolutely key words in the program. Let's cover them. Number one, craving. A craving in contemporary English means something you really, 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 really want something. You have the thing and you're fine. You're done. But you really wanted it. And with this, it doesn't matter if you want it or not. You have it, and then the desire follows the consumption. I mentioned that yesterday. Obsession. If I'm obsessed with something in contemporary English, it means I think about it the whole time. I think of nothing else. It occupies my consciousness. The obsession that it talks about in the Big Book, the obsession with alcohol, is not preoccupation. And I'm actually just going to read a tiny little bit to demonstrate this point. We're all very familiar, or many of us will be very familiar with Jim's story on page 36. So Jim is a little member of AA. He's failed to enlarge his spiritual life. I just spoiled it. I've given away. That's why he's going to relapse. And the point, in some ways, about this story is that there is no warning sign before the thought of the drink. Nothing. I came to work on Tuesday morning, perfectly sane. I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. Perfectly sane. If you used to own a business and you're now the chief gimp at the bottom of the food chain, that's going to be a little irritating if you stop to think about it. By the way, someone pointed out a couple of weeks ago, I remember I felt irritated that I had to be a salesman for a concern I once owned. My life is a concern I once owned, and now I simply work for it. The business has now been taken over by a new direction, which is God. Anyway, next, I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. Perfectly normal. He's not thinking about alcohol. Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. Nothing about alcohol. There's nothing going on here. All the way down until suddenly, still no thought of drinking. I ordered another sandwich and decided to have another glass of milk. No thought about drinking. This is not obsession in the ordinary contemporary sense of being obsessed with something. Suddenly the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it couldn't hurt me on a full stomach. He's an alcoholic, so this is simply untrue. A peculiar mental twist. His perception of reality is twisted in a peculiar way. The obsession is a thought which comes along, which is untrue and overpowers me. So I was saying in a meeting the other day, this is a hijack situation. In contemporary English, obsession is an activity, a mental activity of mine, where I am deciding to think about something the whole time and devote my life to it. The mental obsession in AA, you're just tootling along through your day and you are hijacked and marched to the nearest alcohol. It's a thought that is more powerful than me, and the way it operates 19 times out of 20, occasionally it would operate such that I thought, that I was actually aware of this monstrous thing within me forcing me to do something against my will. Typically, no. Typically, it would give me a reason which I would buy. Someone said the alcoholic mind is like a closed economic system. One half manufactures BS and the other half buys it. So the point is, the obsession is a thought that I can't fully eradicate from my mind, which periodically comes back, and when it comes back, it hijacks me and takes control and makes me think as I'm doing it that I am doing my will when I'm actually doing its will. So obsession means something different. Insanity means a number of different things in the big book. If you look at the word insanity, be very, very careful about which one it means. So sometimes it is the insanity of having the first drink despite one's drinking history. Sometimes it's the insanity of just seeming like a crazy person to someone else when you're drinking. And that's on page 22, I think. Somewhere around there. And then there's alcoholic insanity. And alcoholic insanity is not what people think it is. It's Korsakoff syndrome. It's wet brain. Ironically, you develop that because your brain cells are dehydrated and they just die, pop. The insanity and death, that's the insanity it's talking about. It's not, oh my God, I've had an insane week. And it's not the crazy things you do when you're drunk. So 3 different forms of insanity. Another one as well is meditation. And another one is spiritual. So most towns and cities have got a spiritual bookshop. And I love them. I love the crystals and the incense sticks and the books on esoteric this and esoteric that, and pictures, or lots of pictures with swirly pastel things going on. I love it. Spiritual. People say, I'm going on a spiritual retreat. You think cushions, you think maybe a bit of yoga, you think Chiang Mai, you go to Thailand for a special spiritual retreat, or a little bit of microdosing in Costa Rica. Because it's microdosing, it won't have any effect. Yeah, right. Spiritual means all sorts of things. It can mean, in contemporary English, being one of those slightly annoying holier-than-thou people who I don't have anger, so I'm spiritual. Spiritual means a lot of things in contemporary English. I'll come to that in a second, but meditation as well. You say meditation, and I went to an AA meeting in London a few weeks ago where they did a 10-minute meditation. I thought, well, I should look forward to that. And they read out the bottom of page 86. On awakening, let us think. Let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So the AA meditation, it's told us it's going to give us the instructions for what meditation is. So you have to assume that what they then say is what they mean by meditation. So an AA meditation, I did not know this for a very long time because I didn't know you had to read the book. To be fair to me, the step meetings in London in the 1990s were all 12 and 12 meetings, not big book meetings. And that will change your perception of what the steps are. But anyway, that's another topic. So anyway, the meditation in AA is, I don't get to try and think about esoteric things. I say to God, what are my plans for the day? What do you want me to do today? And 99 out of the 100 things are perfectly ordinary, plain fulfillment of daily obligations. Very rarely is there anything fancy or odd or different in there. I don't need any esoteric knowledge. I don't need to pull back the curtain of the universe and find out what's going on behind there. I don't need to microdose to have a special spiritual experience. That's getting high. That's for self-serving motives. I've never heard anyone, for instance, go to Costa Rica and microdose and say, I came back and I'm now much more diligent in remembering my mother's birthday and paying my taxes. It's not about that, it's about the subjective experience, which is about self, which is about elevating and amplifying the role of self in one's life. The meditation here is how I'm going to be useful. And I've often had the conversation with people where I say, are you meditating? And they say, yeah, I did half an hour of mindfulness this morning. And I said, did you ask God to direct your thinking? No. So, well, you've done modern meditation, but you haven't done AA's meditation. Try that. If in doubt, follow the instructions. If in doubt, do exactly what it says. So I do this. Now, I have a religion, and I practice the religion, and that involves a little meditation, where I won't go into that because that's a personal matter and it won't be relevant. So I might do some other stuff, but I need to make sure that's in addition to, not instead of, the AA meditation. Now, at this meeting, they read out that bit about concentrated thought, about thinking in a concentrated, God-directed fashion about the nuts and bolts of the next 24 hours. And then they said, now some tips on meditation for anyone that's never meditated before. And there was 2 minutes on posture and breathing, and then it said, what we're trying to do is disengage from our conscious mind and allow our mind to float free. So whenever you think of a thought, then you simply allow the thought to float on by and you come back into your body. Conscious contact with God occurs in my mind, not my body. I don't want to come into my body, I want to stay in my mind, because that's where they gave 2 entirely different sets of instructions on meditation. Now, I've done those kind of relaxation things and mindfulness and so on. Those are very good in preparing myself to sit still and ask God what to do next. But they're the preparation, they're not the thing itself. And almost every meditation meeting I've been to in AA adopts Eastern religious practices. Very occasionally there's been a Catholic thing, but it's very rare. It almost always, these modern notions of meditation, nothing wrong with any of those. They're wonderful, they help a lot of people, they've helped me, but they're not, this is for alcoholics. It's written for us, by us. And you think they wrote this just out of the air. They tried other things first, and this is what they landed on because this is what worked when nothing else had worked. And spiritual, I mentioned I'm sorry to be so facetious about spiritual meditation. These are wonderful things, but we've got to make a distinction between how the words are understood now and what the writers of the book meant. What did they mean is what we should be interested in, I think, here. And with spiritual, it is always true that when I've got a problem and I feel beset by, frankly, my own thoughts and emotions which are drowning me, the answer is more spiritual growth. Now, you'd think that that's going to be to do with, prayer and meditation. But there are a couple of lines where it gives us a little bit of a clue. So Jim failed to enlarge his spiritual life. The other place in the book it talks about enlarging spiritual life is on page 14, top of page 15. If an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life, he couldn't possibly survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. Stuff is going to happen. The trials and low spots, not necessarily externally, in fact, usually not externally. I've sailed through really extraordinarily difficult things, and then Wednesday is suddenly a problem for some reason. I can't cope with the same job that I had last Wednesday. This Wednesday, I don't know what to do with it. Trials and low spots. They're simply the next lessons on the curriculum. No way of avoiding the lesson. Failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life. And we must perfect and enlarge our spiritual life. How? Work and self-sacrifice for others. And then in chapter 11, Bill and Bob get sober, and both saw, the two friends saw, it says somewhere, chapter 11, that they both had to stay spiritually active. They didn't go to more Oxford group meetings or hold prayer meetings or do any of those things. Do you know what the next thing they did was? Anyone remember? They went down to the local hospital to look for an alcoholic. So when I'm in trouble and I need to perfect and enlarge my spiritual life, I go to extra AA meetings, I get there early, I stay late, I make sure my hand is up to share, I talk to people afterwards, I pray during the meeting. Who does God want me to talk to after the meeting? And I go and talk to them. And I pray to God, bring people into my life, and the weirdest thing happens. The phone rings with people with problems which are similar to mine, and I can see the answer to their problem. And when I'm giving them the answer to their problem per the big book, I realize, oh my God, that's the answer to my problem as well. The 10 and 11 are there for 12. They're not there so I can have like a comfortable experience on a cushion. They're there so that I can be more useful in the world. That's what it is for. The word identity, which is not a big book word, the word identity is used a lot in contemporary society, and it gets people very, very cross. Some people get very upset at one side of the debate about identity or the other side of the debate about identity. And I have been so relieved by realizing I don't need to have a personal identity. Chuck Chamberlain talks in one of the question and answer sessions in A New Pair of Glasses about self-worth. And he says, I have no image of myself whatsoever. He says, I have no image of myself any more than I have an image of a walrus. And I don't know what an image of myself would add to my life at all. No clue. So I don't bother with that. I don't bother with self-worth. I don't bother with self-esteem. On page 28 of the big book, it says, all of us are children of a living creator. Which means that if I'm the child of a living creator, there's an awful lot in that. I didn't make myself, so I can't take the credit for me. So if I'm proud of myself, I'm proud of something. I've stolen the thing that belongs to God and said, look what I made. So I never ever need to be flattered again. And I was talking to someone this morning who said, well, it's kind of nice to get flattered. No, it's not. It's poison. Because what you're doing, you're buying into the idea that your value is located in someone else's temporary impression of you. As soon as you decide that that's where your value is located, you have to watch very carefully to see if the wind changes. And with every up and down, like with the stock market, few people have been a bit worried about that recently. This is the point, identifying with anything outside of myself, identifying with anything external, identifying in particular with what other people think about me, is a one-way ticket to insecurity. If I'm a child of a living creator, I am of the same stuff that created the universe. I'm not a physical body. I happen to be using a physical body as my communication device right now. That's all the physical body is to me. It's a communication device. My circumstances are where I'm living. They're not who I am. My attributes or features or characteristics they're the cards I've been dealt to play. I'm the poker player, I'm not the cards. Identity is where I say that card is me, that card. Those are cards I've been dealt, they're not who I am. If those cards were taken away, I'm still me. Child of a living creator. That means I'm of infinite value because I'm a child. And the creator of the universe is interested in me as the child? Wow. The idea of wanting to settle for human validation, in contrast to that, forget it. That's the answer forever to my low self-worth problems. My low self-worth problems when I was younger crossed state lines. They were so massive. The book tells me, essentially, I'm valuable because I'm a child of God. When I continued to think ill of myself as a person, my problem was not low self-worth, it was arrogance. I was saying the book's wrong and I'm right. I can judge the worth of a human being and I judge myself to be of no worth. That's an arrogant position. That's not humility. It talks in 12 and 12 about self-abasement. It doesn't use that word, but something like that. Self-abasement being pride in reverse, and that's what it is. And I needed to admit I was wrong. Got low self-worth? You're wrong. You're better than that. Infinitely better than that. Now, the identity. A jigsaw puzzle piece can be described. You can describe its very particular shape, and it looks really, really individual, and it looks as though it's a one-off. Every jigsaw puzzle piece really will be a one-off in that jigsaw puzzle. Imagine you're the jigsaw puzzle piece, and you're in search of your own identity. And you say, well, what am I? What am I for? If you had a jigsaw puzzle piece lost down the side of your couch, I'm sure you've done this, you found one, and it's a mystery. You can't work out what jigsaw puzzle it belongs to. And its identity does not lie in itself. You place it in the right place in the jigsaw puzzle, now it has a purpose. Its purpose is given by the place in the jigsaw puzzle it belongs. So my identity, and as far as I have one, has got nothing to do with me. It's got to do with the places I'm placed in, the people I'm placed with, the paths I walk down during my life. Who am I? The answer to that will be known on my deathbed looking back. And the big book talks about you looking back. The things which came to us when we are placed in God's hands are better than anything we could have planned. Whenever I'm concerned with my identity, I'm selling myself short because I'm saying I'm trying to define myself as this little jigsaw puzzle piece rather than letting God place me in the jigsaw puzzle. Now, if you've got a jigsaw puzzle, each piece is not a picture on its own, it's part of a picture. And how many pictures are there in a jigsaw puzzle? Just one. And that is the thing that matters. And you stand back, and when you see the picture, you stop being able to see the individual pieces. So all of the jigsaw puzzle pieces neurosis about who it is and where it belongs becomes nothing when it gets placed inside the right place in the jigsaw puzzle. My place is in Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon and CA. That's where I belong. When I place myself there, I know who and what I am. I'm part of a greater whole. It says in chapter 11, the things which seem to matter to other people so much no longer matter to them, and I understand that now. There is nothing better than being part of an organisation which changes the lives of millions of people. Yeah. So, one little thing, I'm at 53 minutes, but I'm going to wrap it up in a couple of minutes. I talked about the 4 P's earlier. So the first P, the 4 P's are the things that I rely on rather than my own thinking. The first one is the program of the 12 steps, traditions and concepts. The second one I talked about is the principles contained in those. The third one is the people, and the fourth one is prayer. And prayer is, in my experience, really, really simple. Show me what to do. Show me the next right thought or action. It really doesn't need to be any more elaborate than that. In my religion, I will say some other prayers as well. But it's that direct petition to God which is so important. Now, I don't get an answer straight away very often. What happens is during the course of the day, I get inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. Now, those inspirations and intuitive thoughts and decisions that come down the tubes, they don't have a little label on them saying, hey, I'm from God. Because all thoughts come in the form of inspirations, intuitive thoughts and decisions. And this is where trust comes in. There's a Benedictine writer called Dom Hubert van Zeller. Difficult to get hold of, but he's findable. He talks about prayer not ending at the end of the set time of prayer, but continuing over the rest of the day, like a glider which sets out and then is borne aloft. And Bob Olson talks about this, about how if you sincerely want to do God's will, emotionally want, not just be technically willing, but emotionally wanting, you just have to trust that what's going to come down the tubes is more likely to be God's will than what isn't. The short way round is simply to ask and then be silent. Shut up, wait, do the next right thing. And over the course of the day, little things start occurring to you. And I would have this again and again and again over this period of blessing, lasted about 3 or 4 weeks. Every day I would wake up in chaos. I'd pray, I'd do the morning stuff, just like a dummy, doesn't know how to do anything else. I did pages 86 to 88. Carried on doing service, looking after the home, looking after my other half, doing my job, doing the things, answering sponsee phone calls, going through the book. And during the course of the day, at 100 different points, it was like having a spiritual chiropractor working on me, and I could feel dislocated joints being located back in place. I didn't have to think anything through. I just felt things clicking back into place, then a few hours later I was fine. No complex processes, no I'm going to stare at myself. Those 4 things, those 4 P's, the program, the principles, the people, and the prayer, unlock a 5th P, which is the power. And that is the thing I'm lacking. I'm a light bulb, on my own, I'm a light bulb without a power source. You plug me into the power source, I become a light bulb. And the light bulb is not there for itself. That's all I got, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. That was wonderful. We will now have a break until 4. How long do you want to go? 4:40? Sarah, 4:40? Okay. We'll resume back at 4:40. Please help me close with the Lord's Prayer. We'll remain where we're sitting or standing. And our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. Good job.
can I please ask the Zoom host to stop the recording?